Let's bring in Rick Stroud to preview here on 105.3 The Fan, courtesy of the D&M Leasing Hotline. Good morning, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Does Tampa by 4 make sense in Vegas to you?
You're asking me about gambling lines? I have no clue, man. I don't gamble, and I don't participate in that stuff. But, listen, they should be favored in this game. And I think, simply put, they've been in sort of this playoff mode for a while now. And they also are running the ball as well as anybody in the National Football League right now. And that's an area that we know the Cowboys do not do very well in. So with the momentum they should have from their Chargers game, every game is different, obviously, and for what they're playing for with a one-game lead in the South, 4 points sounds about right, I guess.
Yeah, talk to us about Bucky Irving, his story and the evolution of this running game. We also thought that I lost money on this, not that you would know because you don't want to talk about Vegas, but Chuba Hubbard got shut down by Mike Zimmer and the Cowboys defense. So that'll give some Cowboy fans hope against Bucky Irving. But just talk about his evolution this year.
Yeah, well, they've got 3 running backs. They've all done well at different times. And, it's Rashad White has been the starter. I think the story is Liam Cohen and sort of that offensive scheme, what they've done up front with the offensive line. But Bucky Irving is a guy that was, probably underdrafted out of Oregon. He's not the fastest guy. That might be one of the reasons why he wasn't picked higher. But he absolutely almost in every instance makes the first guy miss, even if it's in the backfield. He gets positive yards. He's averaged over 5 yards a carry from the first tote. And he's explosive. He's going to have 1 or 2 runs a game that's going to go for 30-plus yards. And, when you have a back that's dynamic like that, can also catch the football, they use them both in a 21 personnel type situation that's been very effective for them. And, Bucky Irving is going to be an all-rookie player and, probably should get some Rookie of the Year votes. But he's been their home run hitter and a guy that can close out games for him. He's been terrific.
Rick, we were talking about this last week a little bit when we were just kind of looking at things across the NFL, that the Buccaneers to me feel like the greatest example right now of an any given Sunday type of team. They've won 4 in a row after losing 4 in a row and kind of alternating wins and losses back and forth for that. Even the Saints game they played earlier this year, they go up 17-0, then they get outscored 27-7, then they outscore them 27-0 the rest of the way. Yeah. What is this Buccaneers team? Do you think they've settled into an identity and figured out what exactly they are on a week-to-week basis?
I think they have. I think injuries has been the biggest part of their story this year. If you really look at what's happened on their defense, they've had so many guys miss time. They still don't have either of their top starting safeties. Antoine Winfield Jr. is an all-pro, and he's out again for the second time. Jordan Whitehead, they got back from the Jets. He's on IR. They've just had so many guys down on that side of the ball. They've been playing with one inside linebacker, Levante Davis, 34, still playing his butt off because they don't have a second inside linebacker, so they do a lot of snaps with, dime and nickel situations. So I think they just had to be really resourceful. And when you have the third youngest team in the league and you're relying on a lot of those guys to play because of injuries early in the season, it's taken them a while to learn how to play in the National Football League. That's not a breaking news story. But these guys, because, they lost Mike Evans, they lost Chris Godwin, they lost some really tough games. They've had 3 walk-off losses to teams like Kansas City and San Francisco. I think it hardened them a little bit, but you can't get those back. Now all those rookies that had to play are now experienced, and they're starting to make big plays, and they have settled into a pretty good identity offensively. And defensively, they're doing it with smoke and mirrors. I mean, they've allowed 15 points in the last 4 games a game, which is the best in the NFL since they came back from their bye week. But honest to God, I don't know how they're keeping it together on that side of the ball.
Rick Stroud, Tampa Bay Times, previewing Cowboys Buccaneers right here on 105.3 The Fan. Rick, has Baker solidified himself as the long-term answer at quarterback? And what has it been like covering Mayfield?
He's been terrific. Really enjoy the guy. He's authentic. I think that's what his teammates sensed right away as soon as he got here. And he's been through a lot of stuff. And, it's not the easiest thing to come in and try to follow a Tom Brady, but that's the guy who could do it. And, he signed a 1-year make-it contract for $4 million, allowed them to put him through a sort of quarterback competition with Kyle Trask, which he won. And he has really found a home here. And now he has a 3-year, $100 million contract. And, teammates love him. You see the style of play he has. He's got to be careful he takes too many hits, but the guy absolutely, will not quit on a play. And now I think he's been reunited with the guy that he had for about 5 weeks with the Rams during that odyssey, and Liam Cohen. And the two of them have really collaborated on just what's been, a great relationship and a great offense. And so he's very much at home here, has a new baby, has a new house, and I think he's finally, after many years of wandering through that NFL desert, he's kind of, found his home.
Dallas has sort of changed up their identity as the season's gone along. They've lost players, and they really focus in on running the ball now. And they've had a lot of success with Rico Dowdle in recent weeks. Tampa Bay, I know, had a lot of struggles stopping the run early the last 5 weeks or so. Much improved against teams that like to run the ball, like Carolina and San Francisco and teams like that. You mentioned Chargers. You mentioned you don't know how they're keeping it together on that side of the ball. Is that something where Tampa Bay's just gotten up in some of these games and prevented these teams from running the ball, or is their run defense just tightened up a little bit?
Well, I think it's tightened up a lot. I think, again, experience has done that. I think, the coaches during the bye week really focused on themselves. They were, not tackling well. They had a lot of things that were just football things that were self-inflicted. And I think they've improved on that. They've gotten to know their players a little bit better. But, against some of these teams like the Chargers who, they're going to run the ball, and they have a 290-pound fullback and a 290-pound tight end. I think they've just committed themselves, to stopping the run and then being so versatile and multiple with a lot of these chess pieces that Todd Bowles has back there that can, rush, cover, blitz. You've seen, Levante David get home a bunch of times in pass rush. So they've just been very versatile. And I think, again, these guys have kind of learned their roles, and the coaches have learned them as well, because they're playing a lot of rookies at different times and guys, that are off other teams' practice squads that they've had in camp at some point. So it's really been kind of a grab bag. It's a tribute to Todd Bowles and his coaching staff. But shutting down the run is something that they've done against some pretty good teams. It starts there. And then, he's always dialed up pressures, and it's always created problems for quarterbacks.
Bucs reporter Rick Stroud joining us here on 105 through the Fan. So, Rick, you mentioned Todd Bowles there. Obviously, we know that he's got a defensive background, and he's had some strong defenses over the years. What is he like in terms of, if this is a close game, what is he like in terms of his aggressiveness on fourth down, going for two, just the various things, clock management? How much is his game management a strength? How do you evaluate him as a game manager and somebody who's maybe aggressive with some of those decisions?
Well, he's not Dan Campbell, right? Nobody is. And I think, there are times he will go for it on fourth down, but it's very measured, very calculated, not something that you go into the game thinking, and they're really going to push the envelope here today. Clock management has been an issue. They've lost games going back with Tom Brady because of poor clock management, and they've been on both sides of it. So, I wouldn't consider that a strength of his. What he is I think somebody that, throughout an NFL season, there's going to be a lot of adversity strike. It did with these guys. 2 years in a row, they were 3-1. Both years, some things happened, whether it was schedule, whether it was injuries, or both, where they hit a losing streak. And it's really hard, as you guys know, in Dallas, to turn that around, once it starts rolling downhill like that. But you got to find a way to win in November and December in this league, and if you're going to play in January. So, the ability to people see him on the sidelines. Believe me, he's got a lot of fire going on in that belly. He's a former NFL player. He's extremely competitive. And he relates to his players, but he's also had a steady hand. He's been a guy that hasn't panicked. His teams haven't panicked, and they've gotten better each week. And so I credit him for doing that. Is he going to get them over the hump and win a Super Bowl one day? I think this team's window is really open for a while. They've got a very, very young football team. They look like they have their quarterback for a few years now. And if Todd Bowles continues to win, this would be his third straight NFC South championship. Everybody can dog the conference, or the division rather, but that's just what it is, and winning is what it's about in this league. So, we'll see if he can hang on to a coordinator for more than 1 year. They keep leaving them to be head coaches, but so far so good. And of course, Todd is well known, having coached in Dallas with Bill Parcells, and learned a lot about the game there, and has a lot of good memories about the Cowboys.
Rick, what's your impression of the Cowboys? Are you looking at them as their typical mess? Are you looking at them as a dangerous upset possibility this upcoming weekend? What's your view on Dallas?
Well, they've won 3 out of 4, if I'm not mistaken. So, they've got a little wind in their sails. And obviously, when you don't have your starting quarterback, it's hard to win in this league, and they've managed to do that. We know they've got elite players and game wreckers at various positions, and you have to identify those guys, and they're playing at home. So, all those things tell you that you can't just walk in there and expect to win. You're going to have to play hard and outplay them. And I think they've righted the ship a little bit, given their circumstances. I don't know what the future is of the head coach. I look at it from afar, and I believe that, Jerry Jones, as much as he wants to win, has not done enough, to help them in certain areas for whatever reason. But they've got elite players, at certain positions that are a problem every single Sunday or Monday or Thursday. And they probably should be winning more than they have. But now with the backup quarterback, like I said, who's to say what the expectations are at this point? But, they get plenty of attention whether they win or they lose, and they always are. So they're going to be a story, and the whole, I really believe and all that, is always going to be, top news. So they're an interesting team. It's always fun to go there. And as long as they got the star on their helmets, they're relevant.
Rick, are you a Hall of Fame voter?
I am not. Ira Kaufman is here. Although I've been in the room, and I have filled in there once in a while, so I have a lot of opinions on it.
Is Mike Evans, give us your opinion, is Mike Evans going to be an easy decision?
He would be for me, and I think he will be in that room. Look, he needs to average around, 85, 87 yards these last 3 games, and he'll have his 11th consecutive 1,000-yard receiving season, which doesn't sound like much, 1,000 yards these days. But believe me, his consistency is something that's unparalleled in the NFL. Only Jerry Rice has done it 11 years. No one's done it 10 years to start his career. You look at the touchdowns, the big games he's played in. Everybody says he's the most underrated receiver in the league, but he's so underrated that now he's rated. I think everybody knows who he is, and I know enough about that room to know when they get in there and you're looking at a guy that's, in the top maybe 15 all time in so many different categories, yards, touchdowns, things like that, and he's won a Super Bowl. You look at the quarterbacks he's played with. This guy didn't have Aaron Rodgers for 10 years or somebody like that. So to me, he is a Hall of Famer, first ballot. I never get into that because I don't know what that means. It depends on the class that year. But he's definitely going to have a gold jacket, and he played great last week. He really carried their team.
Rick, we've had some pretty rough opposing fan invasions at AT&T Stadium this year. Baltimore, New Orleans, Cincinnati, a bunch of different teams have come in here and been able to pick up a large chunk of the stadium. How does Tampa travel generally? When you go on the road, do you notice that the fan base travels pretty well, and is that potentially going to be a game where you'll see people scooping up seats here in AT&T?
Well, I think they could. I was shocked by the number of Bucs fans in Los Angeles, although that's kind of an LA thing, right? That the other team seems to invade your stadium, but it was a lot of people, and that's a long trip. This one, not quite as far. It is close to Christmas, though, so I don't know how people want to spend their money. That might be a question, but they've got momentum. The fan base is excited about this team, so it would not surprise me with a 2.5 hour flight if you don't see a lot of red or orange in that stadium on Sunday night.